President Biden, Vice President Harris, and Transportation Secretary Buttigieg met with a bipartisan group of lawmakers earlier to talk about infrastructure. Mr. Biden said it was a priority for everyone.
It's not only creates jobs, but it makes us a hell of a lot more competitive around the world if we have the best infrastructure in the world. We're going to be talking about that, and I welcome all my colleagues here, and thank you all for coming on in. So, thank you.
CBS News transportation correspondent Errol Barnett joins me now. Hi there, Errol. Great to see you. So who was in that meeting, and what do the Biden administration's infrastructure goals look like so far?
Hey there, Elaine. Great to see you. Well, the goals were to go big and do so quickly, rebuilding crumbling bridges, repairing rail lines, improving water systems. We're seeing the importance of that in places like Jackson, Mississippi, for example. All of this, we're told, is on the table. And the Biden administration has been framing it with a moral backbone in a way. They want to make sure that these investments also address issues related to climate change and the distribution, the equitable distribution of resources to underserved communities and minority populations as well. Who was there? Transportation Secretary Buttigieg and a bipartisan team from the House Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure, chaired by Peter DeFazio, and our senior White House correspondent Weijia Zhang caught up with him right after this meeting, and here's what he said President Biden wants to do.
He believes strongly we need to electrify the national highway network because that's where the world is going. And if we're going to be competitive in the world, we've got to be ready to compete. I was encouraged. He's very, very set on getting it done and getting it done pretty damn soon.
Now, his committee is key because it had already passed H.R. 2 back in 2020, the Moving Forward Act, a $1.5 trillion infrastructure bill that failed in the Republican-controlled Senate. You know, the Senate's own committees, I want to reference the Environment and Public Works Committee, it had bipartisan support for a roads and highways bill that had the price tag of $287 billion back in 2019. That never got a floor vote. So Congress comes close. There is bipartisan support. President Biden now wants to get it across the finish line once and for all.
So Infrastructure Week did become a bit of a punchline during the Trump administration. Is the new sort of makeup in Congress now giving the White House some hope it can actually get something done on this?
There is. You know, the reason this has been the pet project of every administration is because there's bipartisan support, there's tangible results that Democrats and Republicans can give to constituents. The issue always is how to pay for it. One example is the Highway Trust Fund. It's partly funded through a gas tax that was enacted in the early 1990s. It rarely covers the full price tag of these projects, and now that so many automotive companies are moving toward electric vehicles, it's a diminishing resource, these gas taxes. So there are questions as to if this new infrastructure bill, which is expected to be huge, will be funded through deficit spending or potential tax increases. President Biden says he feels a federal investment is imperative. It's long overdue. He's framing it as something that helps American competitiveness. He pledged to spend $2 trillion while on the campaign trail pushing for this. So we know that he really wants to go big, and that should follow this COVID relief bill.
You know, Errol, it's interesting. Pete Buttigieg dropped out of the presidential primary contest 1 year ago this week. What has he been doing so far as the head of the Transportation Department?
I guess getting his sea legs, because it was only a month ago, Elaine, he was officially being sworn in. Buttigieg, what's interesting, has been one of the most, if not the most visible cabinet secretary in the Biden administration. Over the past 4 weeks, he's appeared on just about every news network and various television programs, just describing in broad strokes what the administration wants to do. And one consistent point he keeps hitting is that there are consistencies between delivering infrastructure for rural parts of the country that feel like they are left out of things like high-speed internet and other resources, and addressing racial equality. So he feels that those things can be delivered both for Democrats and Republicans. He's really been making the public case for the past few weeks, as now he still assembles his team and moves forward for trying to get what will be the first major piece of legislation that he has his fingerprints on through Congress.
Well, we've really just seen time and time again, especially recently, for instance, in Texas, how critical, absolutely essential, proper working infrastructure is. So we'll continue to follow that. I know you will too. But Errol, I want to turn to another development on your beat. An investigation by the Transportation Department's Inspector General found that former Transportation Secretary Elaine Chao used department resources to help her family and directed federal resources to perform personal tasks. What exactly did they find?
Well, we should make clear that the IG report doesn't make a formal finding that Chao violated ethics rules, but in its 44-page report, it's pretty damning because it outlines more than 12 examples of her office helping her father and sister's shipping business. Her father developed this shipping business, which transports resources. It's a major player in the Chinese market. Ms. Chao's sister now runs that company. And one of the most concerning issues that the IG found in its probe was that her family was planning a trip to China. This was a business trip, and the secretary was using department resources to arrange that trip and facilitate what her family would be doing for its private business. It was ultimately canceled, that trip, when issues were raised about it, but it did find that she directed staff to do things like edit her father's Wikipedia page, send out his own book to CEOs to see if they could write the foreword to it, and a spokesman for Chao says that this report exonerates her. It closes the book, they say, on an election year effort to impugn her career. The IG referred its investigation to the Justice Department and U.S. Attorney's Office in D.C. For criminal prosecution, but both declined to pursue.
All right, CBS News transportation correspondent Errol Barnett for us. Errol, really good to have you. Thank you so much.
You got it, Elaine. Thank you.